We would like to now start the second part of the Japan Climate Action Summit. In resuming our program, I would like to receive speeches from distinguished guests. First of all, the Minister of the Environment, His Excellency Mr. Yoshiaki Harada, please. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the kind introduction. I am Yoshiaki Harada, the Minister of the Environment. About a week ago, I was appointed the Minister of the Environment. I ask for your continued support for me. Following the adoption of the Paris Agreement and SDGs, the world is setting its direction toward decarbonization. Global Climate Action Summit, GCAS, held in California recently, is indeed a case in point, and I understand the summit brought together non-state actors from around the world, which included many JCI members. I am very pleased and encouraged to see such a large turnout for this summit in Japan. Now, according to the special report on 1.5 degrees released by the IPCC a few days ago, the average temperature of the world has already increased 1 degree, and it may hit 1.5 degrees by the middle of this century. To prevent that, we must achieve net zero emissions by the mid-century. The report, therefore, called on all actors, including governments, businesses, and citizens, to strengthen their action. At present, the government of Japan is vigorously discussing with a view to developing a long-term decarbonization strategy based on the Paris Agreement. As Environment Minister, I will lead the process to create innovation and significantly cut greenhouse gas emissions in Japan. It will not be on the extension of the past efforts. Also, I endeavor to make maximum contribution to global emissions reduction. Yet, the government alone cannot achieve decarbonization. We need non-state actors like you to work with us. We rely on cities and businesses who make concrete effort toward low-carbon transition on the ground. To raise momentum among various climate actors, the Ministry of the Environment will host Climate Week immediately before COP24 this year. I call on you to help us in this regard. In closing, I wish a great success for this summit, and it will make a big step forward in realizing a zero-carbon society. With that prayer, I would like to conclude my remarks. Congratulations, and also thank you. Thank you very much, Minister Harada. Next, I want to invite Mr. Yoshihiko Isozaki, State Minister of Economy, Trade and Industry, to speak. I would like to congratulate you, and also good afternoon. I am Yoshihiko Isozaki, State Minister of Economy, Trade and Industry. And first of all, I would like to sincerely congratulate you on the successful opening of Climate Change Action Summit, bringing together so many people who support Japan Climate Initiative. In recent years, we have seen a rapid increase in ESG investment globally. Businesses actively engaged in activities to counter climate change can attract more money, which enables them to make even further efforts. In this way, virtuous cycle of environment and growth is being created. It is no exaggeration to say that addressing climate change has become a source of competitive edge for companies. Japan should continue to innovate and achieve robust economic growth by leveraging strength of businesses. To achieve the goal under the Paris Agreement, it is important to set an ultimate goal and explore all possibilities. In the fifth basic energy plan, we set forth the path toward energy transformation and decarbonization by 2050. In addition, in automobile sector, for example, after a thorough discussion with the industry, we set a long-term goal of what we call well-to-wheel zero emission. In other words, we aim to eliminate emissions from the entire spectrum from fuel to driving. We focus on the following 3 points because it is important to address global warming as part of growth strategy by capitalizing on the strength of Japanese companies. First, Japanese businesses excel in climate-smart products and technologies. If these products and technologies are widely used in the world, we can hopefully contribute to global emissions reductions. Second, it is critical to mobilize wisdom available in the world to promote innovation. This week, the government hosted an event called ICEF, Innovation for Cool Earth Forum, in cooperation with many like-minded organizations, bringing together global leaders to discuss how to address climate change through innovation. Third, we need to pump more private capital into green sectors. For this purpose, we established TCFD study group, where industry and financial institutions come together to exchange views to find the best way to visualize businesses' efforts in environment. Only when industry, municipalities, and government work firmly together in this way, we can promote activities to address global warming as part of global strategy. If we want to achieve zero carbon society in 2050, it is critically important that individual companies and cities make effort with ingenuity. Therefore, I sincerely hope that summit like this will become a huge groundswell. In closing, I hope that JCI's activity will lead to greater climate commitment by Japan in the international community. With that prayer, I would like to conclude my remarks. Congratulations once again.
Thank you very much. Next, may I invite His Excellency, Mr. Norikazu Suzuki, Parliamentary Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs, to say a few words. Once again, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As was introduced, Parliamentary Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs, Norikazu Suzuki is my name. Thank you so much for inviting me to Japan Climate Action Summit. Last month, Global Climate Action Summit was held in San Francisco. The momentum for climate actions by non-state players has been building up in the international community. And I'm delighted to see such a grand meeting is held here in Japan as well. We see in the international community a rapid expansion of renewable energy and the declining cost, development of climate change businesses, as well as expansion of green investment. Such progress of climate actions in the world and movement for decarbonization is irreversible. Building upon such international activities, government has been undertaking various initiatives to exert leadership in the climate action, one of which has been our undertaking under Prime Minister's instruction with various insight from experts in a series of discussions in order to devise long-term strategies to reduce GHGs, create a virtuous cycle of environment and growth, encourage business-driven technological innovation. The strategy advocates a new vision unencumbered by conventional ways of thinking. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs expressed in the meeting that this strategy needs to be something impressive to the international business community, so that you would say, just as you'd expect from Japan. As you know, In climate actions, non-state actors play a very important role. It's not just government directing a way, crafting policies. Without support by non-state actors and their activities, Japan cannot exert leadership in tackling climate change. So based on the understanding, government of Japan has given endorsement to undertake coalition, an initiative by local governments to achieve so-called 2 degrees under the Paris Agreement. Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been making wholehearted efforts to further strengthen collaboration with non-state actors. We would like to continue these activities. As the government, we would like to join hands with you. The Japanese government intends to proactively join hands with you, leading climate actions, government and non-state actors working in tandem, not just in the vision government devises as a long-term strategy, but in actual activities. We intend to take initiatives that would garner an appreciation, just as you would expect from Japan. I see today's summit as a significant first step. Together with all of you who are here, we would like to really tackle the climate action. So based with that backdrop, we would like to again communicate what we do to the world. I would like to make that pledge, and with this I would like to conclude my remarks. Congratulations once again.
Thank you very much for His Excellency, Mr. Suzuki. And next, we'd like to invite Mr. Takashi Nagao, Parliamentary Vice Minister of Financial Services Cabinet Office. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Takashi Nagao, Parliamentary Vice Minister for Financial Services Cabinet Office. Thank you very much for inviting me to Japan Climate Change Action Summit. Climate changes, as mentioned by Prime Minister's article contributed to the Financial Times the other day, is one of the important pillars for achieving SDGs. While the entire Japanese government is working on SDGs, the FSA released in June this year a paper titled Financial Administration and SDGs, putting the FSA's policy measures into SDGs perspectives. In this Financial Administration and SDGs, the idea is presented that SDGs are consistent with the objective of financial administration, which is to increase the well-being of the people through sustainable growth of companies and economy, as well as stable asset formation. In promoting SDGs, the FSA's basic direction is to encourage voluntary action by each economic entity so that the mid to long-term investment and finance returns and corporate value enhancement can be delivered. The FSA also clearly shows what financial administration is aimed at every year and discloses its progress and performance every year. This year's financial administration's practice to date and its future policy released last month stated that the agency is committed to work actively to keep promoting SDGs by supporting financial institutions and businesses willing to make disclosure in line with the TCFD recommendation in collaboration with other relevant ministries and agencies. We will try to offer support to financial institutions and businesses in concrete manner as described. Furthermore, International Network for Greening the Financial System was established where central banks and financial supervisory authorities consider climate change risks in financial supervision. The FSA joined the network in June this year. The network is now undertaking tasks for a release of a report scheduled in April 2019, and we are committed to actively continue to contribute to this discussion. In closing, I hope that today's summit will deepen discussion on climate change actions among members of financial institutions, businesses, NGOs, and experts. and also with SDGs gaining momentum in Japan and disclosure in line with the TCFD recommendations, we hope to see the fund will come from different parts of the world to those businesses actively addressing environmental challenges to facilitate further growth and measures. Thank you. And once again, congratulations to this summit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nagao. Next, we would like to move on to the panel discussion. It concerns vision for a long-term low-carbon strategy for Japan. The moderator is Mr. Ohno. The floor to yours. Now, we would like to start this panel discussion, vision for long-term low-carbon strategy for Japan. We listened to the two keynote speeches, which said that Japan has excellent decarbonization technology. In the next session, the members from the businesses and local governments said that they already started taking initiatives. They have targets, set the targets. They are now taking actions. So we have technology covered. The local governments and businesses are already taking actions. But in order to move it forward, what's necessary in climate actions? It's really about the long-term emission strategy that's devised by the Japanese government. We would like to now start discussing that. Allow me to introduce the members of the panel. From my left, Professor Yukari Takamura, Integrated Research of Systems Sustainability Society, the University of Tokyo, UTIAS. Professor Junko Edahiro, Graduate School of Leadership and Innovation, Shizenkan University. As was already introduced, on climate action, as a group, Japan's CLP is at the forerunner, and director, and also from the LIXIL ESG promotion, the General Manager Toshihiro Kawakami, CDB Japan Director, the Michio Morisawa. Lastly, WWF Japan, Climate and Energy Group Leader Conservation Division, Naoyuki Yamagishi. So with these members, I would like to discuss the vision for long-term low-carbon strategy for Japan. Professor Takamura, it's already been discussed, but on the 6th in Cancun, there is the IPCC, the mission, and there was a special report on the 1.5 degrees. In the various energy, you are actually an expert in renewable energy, but even before that, in the international negotiations on the climate change, you have been watching this. You are really an expert. So first of all, in the IPCC, if you could just share with us the essence of the IPCC 1.5 degrees report, what kind of measures do we need here in Japan? Mr. Ohno, thank you. Initially, this is about IPCC's 1.5 degrees special report. What I think as essence is something I would like to share with you. Several of you have already discussed this. We have already seen 1 degree increase, but around 2030, it might actually reach 1.5 degrees if it's fast happening. Climate change-related risks. We had the abnormal weather and the natural disasters. I think you can really feel it on your skin. Climate change-related risks, with even 1.5 degrees increase, it's likely to be higher than what we are seeing. But if it's 2 degrees compared with 1.5 degrees, it's going to pose greater risks. 1.5 degrees, in order to limit the temperature increase, for CO2, 45% reduction by 2030 versus 2010, and 2050, as Yokohama City said, zero emission. That level of reduction is required. energy, buildings, transportation, and the infrastructure, industries in all walks of life, the reduction is necessary. Bold, the wide measures for reduction is necessary. To do so, investment. How can you increase the scale of investment? Those are all necessary according to the report. Unfortunately, including in Japan, if you look at the 2030, 2050, the targets that has been submitted, we cannot delimit the temperature increase within 1.5 degrees. That's unfortunate. So 2030, much earlier than 2030, global CO2 emissions should start decreasing. We have to take initiative to do so. Otherwise, no matter what happens, the risks of climate change and the cost for countermeasures cannot really be reduced. As Minister Harada mentioned, regarding this report, not just governments, but the roles of non-state actors are pretty emphasized. That's another characteristic of the report. 1.5 degrees and 2 degrees, regarding the difference between the two, based on this special report, the WRI summarized something, and I share that with you, but at least world population affected by heat wave at least once in 5 years, between 1.5 degrees and 2 degrees. This is the difference by the factor of 2. And North Pole and the coral reef, the significant impact will be held. And Asahi said, especially the agricultural crops and the marine resources, again, there's a significant difference in terms of the level of impact between 1.5 degrees and 2 degrees. What Japan should do, I think that's what Mr. Ohno is asking us against this backdrop. Needless to say, as you might have already noticed, the paradigm is already shifting concerning the climate action against global warming. Many speakers talked about decarbonization, zero emissions. They said this as a kind of a matter of fact. And there's a short-term cost involved, but doing so is for the business and for the communities. It has a benefit. That's the strong message that you have already heard. So against that backdrop, the long-term strategies, Professor Edahiro has been working on this. The long-term strategies are, of course, very important. And as Yokohama City mentioned, and many businesses have already mentioned, where are we headed? Are we headed firm resolve to target zero emission? How do you actually show that in the long-term strategy? What should cover? Strong will for decarbonization. It is extremely important for the government to show that. The private sector and for non-state actors to do so, and in order to get more funding from the private sector, needless to say, the government is moving into this direction. The government is crafting the policies. The government should be responsible and showing that to the public, and that must be shown by the long-term strategy. Regarding the significance of the strategy, especially showing the zero emission and decarbonization, where do we need innovation? What has to be changed? What kind of initiatives we have to take? I think it will be a good agenda setting once that's done. Regarding the 2070 forecast by international organizations, if it's between the 2 degrees with a confidence level of 66%, to do so, regarding the power, electricity that we use globally, it has to be, we need to see the conversion to 95% to the low carbon technology. So what are necessary for us to think about what has to be done, and for Japan to be at the comparable level, or when Japan is pursuing zero emission in the world of energy, in industries, in transportation, what's required? We have to think about those things, but these specific goals must be shown in this long-term strategy. And then there are existing technology and existing systems and institutions and the society. We can't possibly achieve this. That was already mentioned. But how can we create this new innovation and the transformation? Especially many of you who are here are businesses. To translate that to business opportunities, government has to extend support and the pathway for that transition. Policies have to be shown by the government in a specific manner. The strategy, long-term strategy must show that. Professor Takamura, thank you so much. As Professor mentioned, the government of Japan about the low emission strategy. Since then, next June in Osaka, G20 will be held, and the government is trying to release this before the G20. Among the G7, we are one of the laggards. And in August, the advisory panel was established. Professor Takamura and Edahiro, they were members of that panel. I think in that the advisory, the second meeting, Professor Edahiro, the necessity to have such the high targets and the innovation is also necessary. Would you like to comment on that?
Thank you. And thank you very much for invitation today, and also the RE100, and also the initiatives for decarbonization is now becoming a mainstream, which is very pleasing to me. And what exactly is needed? And there are 3 points I'd like to make. Firstly, the compelling, ambitious target, and as well, Professor Takamura said, 1.5 degrees, and the report was really issued, and it would be Japan, which would be the very first country to really announce the target would be the G20. And it's not going to be a dream-like story, but we should come up with the ambitious but compelling and convincing target. And together with Takamura-san, this was the long strategy roundtable, and then I am one of the members, and then we have really shared the common awareness as to the need of the decarbonization. We are not really talking about whether decarbonization is necessary or not, but all these the businesses and members do share the same awareness. So by when and how that would be achieved, and so that is the sort of discussion point. And so we do have a very fixed direction to be pursued, and by when and how, and that should be really developed until the G20, and that's the work to be done by the government of Japan. Well, here in Japan, according to the opinion poll, the countermeasures for the global warming would be negative to the businesses and others, and because it will be really cost negative in others. But looking at opinion polls in the world, they are really saying that it's beneficial to them, and that would be conducive to improve their standard of living. So it is not negative, but it would be positive, and we have to have this kind of change of mindset. And the climate group issued, and those of the members RE100 really showing stronger financial performance vis-a-vis the non-members, and so the initiatives to decarbonize would be beneficial to the stronger performance. And also the Sweden has come up with the zero emission in 2045, and then all the other countries are really saying the 2050 is their target year, and so they would like to be ahead of others and to really pioneer them. And also that already from 1990, 25% reduction has been achieved, and that has been very beneficial for the health, and also local community has gained their confidence and pride, and so that would be leading to the well-being of the people. It's not just perseverance, but there are so many positive factors and positive outcome, and so I think that kind of the change of the mindset would be required. And the second point is innovation, and whenever we talk about this, innovation is always key, and that is really true. But how we will be able to really generate innovation, and the discussion is lacking. Even if I take the participation in the discussion with government, and then they would really present an image, if they really can spend more money, they will be able to really generate and come up with more innovation. That is not really true. And Maski which was a very stringent emission laws were put in place, and because of that, the Japanese car companies have come up with better vehicles. And so with the stricter and the stringent regulations and laws, we will be able to see some innovation which would really be achieved. And so whether it will be the regulation or the carbon pricing type of the scheme, it all depends on the discussion to be conducted from this point and but only if we have the innovation together, we will be able to achieve that. And a long-term strategy, even with the change of the administration, we have to have the guarantee that there is not going to be any change to the regulation. If there is a change of the administration, even if we are saying that this is important, then and after the change of the administration, if there is a change in policy, then people are not willing to make an investment. And in Sweden, the political parties get together and then clearly say that there is not going to be any change in the policy, even if there isn't change in the administration. And so Prime Minister Abe is taking the lead now. But whatever the administration may be, there has to be a very firm commitment on the part of the government to really carry on with this kind of initiatives.
Thank you so much about the advisory panel. The necessity of ambition has already been mentioned. I think that's great, but the issue is how best to realize. First, there have to be policies. Kawakami-san at the CLB, where you heads the organization for long-term strategy. I understand that you have some proposals. Would you like to share with us the essence?
I am Kawakami. I would be LIXIL and also co-chair of Japan CLP. Now, with regard to Japan CLP, Sekisui House representative also introduced the organization. It is not free of charge. We have to take a membership fee. Currently, 85 companies are members of CLP. So 85 companies are working together to achieve decarbonization. And what could we do to do that? Also, we are making a policy recommendation as well. So like-minded people are working together in Japan CLP. We want to increase the membership going forward. If you are interested, please come to us. Please contact us. Now, Japan CLP, with regard to long-term strategy, we are going to make a policy recommendation to the government. One is, as Professor Takamura and Professor Edahiro are saying, that the private sector company like us believe that Japan definitely is going to achieve decarbonization, and I hope the government will explicitly say that that is the policy. If there is a clarity of policy, companies like us will be able to go ahead with decarbonization effort and investment. We want to have that assurance or guarantee. And also, in addition, we want to make a contribution in the international community, and that contribution has to be mentioned in long-term strategy. We have very excellent low-carbon technology. So in Japan, we achieve zero emission, and to the same extent, we want to make a contribution. If we consider scope 3, maybe we should do even more, several dozens of times of contribution compared to Japan's results. So definitely we have to achieve zero in Japan, and we are going to make a contribution to the world. And by so doing, Japan will be a leader in decarbonization, and that strong intention has to be clarified by the government, and that will be included in the policy recommendation. There are two channels to achieve this: carbon pricing and decarbonization infrastructure and public investment there. Carbon pricing toward decarbonization, Japan clarifies its clear intention by the government. That is to say, our past economic activities was predicated based on the assumption that we can emit CO2. However, we have to say that we are going to change the paradigm here, and something which cannot be done by one company alone. The government can provide public funding to establish necessary infrastructure so that we can work all together. So long-term strategy has to include that. We want to submit the policy recommendation perhaps this month, and we are now having a very heated discussion within our organization.
Thank you so much, Morisawa-san. Again, as a director of the CDP and also the PRI activities, you've been extending support to businesses. So based on your experience, in order to move one step forward, what are the things that you would expect from the government?
Thank you. In December 2015, many of the companies really agreed to adopt the Paris Agreement. But for that, the many businesses and industry really had a very positive attitude towards that. And as Obayashi-san mentioned earlier, and in view of the Paris the agreement, and the women business both was really being active and vibrant. And at that point in time, the industry were very positive. Prior to that, there was an intention on the part of the investors to really support such companies or businesses, and they are really going to incorporate this kind of initiatives for the climate changes. And then investors who have clearly indicated their policy to make investment into these businesses, and an ESG investment move. And Christian Figueres has really been very active in really promoting and the importance of such to the US and Europe. And Paul, who came over to Japan this time, and Christiana and Paul and I took part in this kind of the camp. And then, why it is necessary for such an investment? And on top of that, the Paris Agreement was reached, and in those days, Japan was not at that stage, and this very positive stance by the industries and investors, and only after that, the government could be finding themselves in a position to really come up with the policies to support that in terms of the long-term visions and for the human beings and for the earth. And then we are to look at the world economic development. And the mission is to really have the measurement done by each of the institutional investors and businesses and cities, and then to really focus on the quick action to be taken so that the truly sustainable economy is established. And so the 2020 goal, we are to really draw up the plan and implement that. And those are the goals and visions and missions. It's not that the government is going to really take unilaterally, but the very positive attitude by the investors and also the industries. And these are very important. And we are finally seeing this beginning here in Japan, and that is really supporting the very positive policy to be adopted by the government.
So before the Paris Agreement, there was a lot of movement in the private sector, but now after the Paris Agreement, there's more momentum. So it's complementary.
If I can, I forgot to say, and carbon pricing, which was referred to earlier, and carbon pricing, and this is very important. And also, Ohno-san and Takamura-san are really serving as the members of the carbon pricing scheme. And Paul, for so many years, why is it that the Japanese businesses are not positive to introduce the carbon pricing? They do have the very good technology, and that they will be very much appreciated and evaluated in that. But since several years ago, every time he comes over to Japan, he is emphasizing that. And those of the companies in China, they are not really having such decarbonizing technology, but they are now really having developed such technology. And so I don't know exactly what would be the competitive advantage of Japan now, but we think we can continue to enjoy that.
So, thank you. But in order to move further, there is this Toranomon dialogue. So, Yamagishi-san, you've been following this too. What do you think?
Thank you. So, panel discussion, I think we have exhausted our topics, but on behalf of NGO, I want to say something worthwhile. Toranomon dialogue was just mentioned. Toranomon dialogue, this is a United Nations event underway. For what purpose are we having this dialogue? It's for simple reason. Paris Agreement has a 2 degrees or 1.5 degrees lofty target, but under that, each country has a target. However, these targets are short of the Paris goal. That is why we have to work more, and we want to have materials to discuss on in this dialogue. COP21 was the place where dialogue achieved the result. And at that time, what Japan has to do, naturally, based on this stock-taking, Japan, under the Paris Agreement, has to review the target that the country set. So, therefore, next year, when the government announced long-term, low-carbon strategy, just the announcement of strategy is not enough, because 2030 target announced under Paris Agreement, if we want to achieve a long-term strategy, long-term goal, maybe we have to review the target. We have to be more ambitious, otherwise we won't be appreciated. And since 2011, after the March 11 disaster, the scientists and researchers came together to review our target. As other panelists said, zero carbon, renewable energy 100%, maybe these are possible, feasible, and we are conducting research for that purpose. So technically speaking, it is possible, and that result is mentioned on this slide. This is a result of the research. I don't want to go into details, but I hope that please go to the WWF website to study a little bit about this. Next year, 80% reduction, just simply announcing once again long-term goal of 80%, Japan would not be viewed as a leader or appreciated by international community at all. So our strategy next year has to reflect our and your ambitions.
Thank you. So we need to really communicate the very ambitious target. When it comes to the implementation, it involves various policies. Already in the first half of the session, you had carbon pricing. On the emissions, you have to pay to emit. 2017, with 42 countries and 25 regions, carbon pricing has already been introduced. Tokyo has introduced, but no other prefectures have introduced this. Question to Kawakami-san, in the CLP proposals about carbon pricing, since it's, I think, rare that the company comes up with that kind of proposal. What's in the background of the CLP proposal?
Yes, as I said earlier, for one thing, clearly, the zero carbon society, we have to have a clear indication of intention by the government, because we are going to work together. As Ms. Morisawa said, the companies engaged in decarbonization would have a very big opportunity in terms of carbon pricing. You use the same raw materials with the same costs. On one hand, there is old-fashioned emitting companies. To these companies, carbon pricing would push up costs. On the other hand, decarbonizing companies don't have to pass costs on to consumers. Therefore, competitive edge will be boosted. Therefore, for a company and for a country, this is highly worthwhile in our view. Having said that, on the other hand, what we have to consider at the same time when it comes to carbon pricing, maybe carbon tax, the money can be collected. For what purpose are we going to use that collected money? That has to be considered by the public. So we have a load pricing in addition to carbon pricing. However, load pricing is something people are reluctant to pay, and this is used for road infrastructure development. That is why, although there is a reluctance, people are paying road pricing. Now, when it comes to carbon pricing, toward the decarbonization, the money collected through carbon pricing has to be used for zero carbon pathway. Therefore, the usage of the money has to be also discussed by the public as well. So how are you going to change Japan, in what way? And that has to come into our discussion too. Another point, from the economic circles, there is opposition, according to some. But then why the private sector is opposed to carbon pricing? In my personal view, decarbonization is sometimes difficult for some industries and sectors. So the carbon pricing is understandable. Then what happens to us? What are we going to do? I think that is an honest voice we are hearing from some sectors. So to these sectors are challenged, how the government is going to address? Are we going? The government is going to give a time allowance, or in order to cause innovation, maybe public and private sector work together to promote innovation for decarbonization, because you don't want to create any losers through carbon pricing scheme. So we have to consider for what purpose the money is to be used, and also how are we going to manage transition process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Morisawa-san. With the carbon pricing, perhaps Japanese businesses could develop further. It's an opportunity. But on the other hand, for those businesses with large emissions, it might be difficult for them to tackle this. With carbon pricing, they could utilize that as an opportunity to try to address the issue. Again, carbon pricing, we don't have much time. Professor Takamura, one comment, please. Thank you. Towards decarbonization. Concerning the Japanese policies, I think the key is low carbonization in energy sector. I think that would be the key. Naturally, it's in relation to the overarching target of decarbonization, CDP poll. Last year, I think it was Toyo Keizai, you were interviewed by the journal. High emission coefficient. The Japanese businesses will have to continue to keep using them. Such energy situations actually dampen the lowered competitive edge of the Japanese industry. That was pretty impressive. So where do we see gaps towards decarbonization? If you avert that, the decarbonization in the energy sector, how can we do this, implement this? From thermal power generation to renewables, even the thermal power, from coal to gas, how best can we actually convert as one methodology, I think carbon pricing is significant. Because in 2015, when energy mix was decided, unfortunately, the renewable energy cost, even if it's lowered, in 2030, building up a new coal thermal power plant was less expensive. Unless we can change this, there will be no changes in the energy mix. As one option, the carbon pricing, I think, is significant. Thank you. So, of course, having a very ambitious target, that's okay, but just one thing, we need to create the institution mechanism. The carbon pricing is one option. Last year, if you look at the power supply, 33% came from coal in terms of the mix of the supply. To change this as a one methodology, we really need to address this, how best to introduce this. There are so many things that we want to discuss, but next will be the main event, top leader session. We don't have much time before that. So, Yamagishi-san, from your side, perhaps you have 1 minute each, and devising long-term strategies to implement this. What do you intend to do, or what does JCI, what should we do? What would be your message to the participants? 1 minute each, please.
Yes, thank you. In this session, in this conference, many people said what was quite impressive. We need a sense of ownership. We have to be convinced, and top management has to have the resolve. But we don't know we can achieve the target, but we set the target. That was very impressive. So I think that is important, setting a target. And we have to focus on the reason why we can rather than reason why we cannot. So that's how we can build up arguments or discussion. Compared to other countries, Japan is quite different in that in international community, they take this as a positive opportunity to road decarbonization. However, in Japan, there is a tendency that people focus on why we cannot do this. So I think JCI has to change this tendency.
Morisawa-san, please. Well, I think Yamagishi-san has covered a lot, and what the industry can do, and that should be shown, and the investors are really recognizing and appreciating that. And then by so doing, the policy of Japan government has changed a lot. And as Professor Takamori said, well, we should make a change in the energy sector, and coal-fired power plants, and then for so many years. Well, even in this developed country, well, are you really going to really think about that? And then there are so many inquiries and questions raised. And then it was really surprising that we are really continue to do that and then newly build that. And then so in order to really reduce emission, it couldn't be the case. And then if you just have the simple calculation, is that you can just have the coefficient of this multiplied by the consumption, and then you can get the emission volume. And whilst we are really trying to reduce the emission, and then you are not really lowering the energy coefficient, and it's just a matter of simple multiplication. And we should be aware of that, and then we should really be resolved to take on that challenge. And because of that, the liberalization of the energy market is really taking place. And the energy agency has really said yesterday that they are really going to really work on that. And then, I was really wondering, who this person is from the agency. And then, there's no other choice but to really work in that. And vis-a-vis towards G20 next year, we have to really show that Japan has changed. And the JCI, this is a sort of a cross-sectional sort of the alliance in Japan. And in the past, I had so many information exchange with the overseas sort of the parties, and we would like to share such information with the members of JCI and others, and its MEs and others. So we would like to work harder. Thank you.
Mr. Kawakami, please. Yes, Japan CLP, we have 85 company members. So these 85 companies have to achieve decarbonization of their own respective companies. We have to make a commitment to STB and RE100, and this move has to be expanded beyond 85 companies, and we have to convey our strong message to the government as well to achieve zero carbon society. E.ON is also a member of Japan CLP. E.ON accounts for 1% of the Japanese electricity demand. 85 companies of Japan CLP together account for 5%. At least we have to make it zero. That is emissions share. So likewise, JCI can make the same effort. JCLP is a organization of private companies, but JCI includes cities and municipalities and young people, non-state actors, and also healthcare-related people, and therefore religious organizations as well. So I think JCI can expand the membership. It's a wonderful platform to work on. As a member of JCI, we are going to work positively and strongly toward zero carbon. Thank you.
So the results of the summit, Professor Edahiro, Professor Takamura, I hope that you will just bring it back to the panel.
Thank you. And we are now really witnessing the big paradigm shift. In the past, quality-wise, and then you have cheaper but lower quality. But nowadays, nobody buys lower quality products, and so you have the better quality, but CO2 is really immediately larger. Nobody is going to buy that, and so there is going to be this the paradigm shift. And the scientist Thomas Kuhn, and how to really generate a paradigm shift. And so you really have to point out some of the things that you have not known in the past. And then based upon the new paradigm, you have to really convey and communicate more the new behavior patterns. And I think this is the starting point. But slowly we are changing in Japan, but we are required to have a sense of urgency and to move more quickly. And so as has been mentioned by the Commissioner of the Energy Agency, or this person shares the same sentiment, and so we really have to accelerate the things and then move more quickly. And this is related to that point, and we didn't have much discussion on this point. CSR, corporate social responsibility, and this is the social responsibility of the corporations, but consumers do have the social responsibility, and so how we will be able to engage consumers. And that is another theme that we should also really pursue. And JCI, what I expect highly of JCI is that there are so many people who are opposing to this idea, and then some people who are just standing by. But if they are becoming minority people, and then that will be a very big advantage for us. And those who are people who are, or the companies who are using the fossil fuel and emission of the CO2 is large, but it is not that we are really going to point our fingers to somebody, but we are to really work together in collaboration and to achieve the greater target.
Professor Takamura? Today, from the various ministries, again, there was a minister, the state minister, and parliamentary vice minister. I think you have felt that the government is changing, the country is changing. The JCI has taken initiatives. Your big movement has resulted in such changes. At the government level, they have the will to really transform. So, unencumbered by past practices, I hope that the government will come up with bold measures. After the release of the 1.5 special research, this is what Dr. Gavin Schmidt said of the Goldman Institute for Space Studies. The best time to start reducing emissions was 25 years ago. The second, if there should be the second best timing, that would be today. That's what Dr. Schmidt said. I think this is a significant, it's a message from a scientist. This is what I would like to take it to the heart. Thank you. Last autumn in Bonn, COP23 was held. And you talked about the America Pledge. They had this pavilion. They held an event. I went there, and one after another, the various representatives of companies spoke. These are the businesses that they are doing. These are the measures that they are taking. Or there are also representatives from the state government. So I was impressed. But now, by holding this event, I could see that now we see that the era has arrived in Japan. I'm pretty sure you have felt that. All the members of the panel, I would like to thank you with a great round of applause. Thank you so much. Somehow I could make the time. Now, next will be the top leaders session. Thank you.
Ohno さん、皆様ありがとうございました。
Ladies and gentlemen, we now would like to have the top leaders session, and we do have these top leaders representing Japan, and we are really going to have their discussion. Let me introduce the leaders here. Ms. Yuriko Koike, Governor of Tokyo. Mayor of Kyoto City, Mr. Daisaku Kadokawa. Mr. Kazuo Hirai, Chairman, Sony Corporation. President and CEO, Ricoh Company Limited, Mr. Yoshinori Yamashita. And from now, we would like to ask Ms. Hiroko Kuniya to serve as the moderator for this session. Ms. Kuniya, please. the very last session of today. And from now on, we are really going to have the top leader session. And Professor Takamura referred to this for the special report of ICPP on 1.5 degrees, and the important points were presented. And at the earliest timing in 2030, the average global temperature would rise 1.5 degrees to the pre-industrial era. And so that was mentioned, and 1.5 degrees, if that temperature rise really becomes a reality, what would be the impact to the world, and also what would be the burden and cost on the world? It is immeasurable, and so that's what I felt strongly. And the movement for decarbonization, the next 10 years will be a very, very critical decade for human beings, and within the next 10 years, how we will be able to accelerate such initiatives for decarbonization. We are really asked to look into this, and all these speakers representing the various organizations and the businesses have really said that they are really aiming for decarbonization, and that is as if they are taken for granted. But if you just go out of this venue, and then I have been really continuously trying to communicate the need of the SDGs, and oftentimes after my presentation, how my organization can really put the priority to address this kind of decarbonization, the other goals, and that is the often asked questions, SDGs related questions. And I am very confident that one of the important elements would be the commitment of the top leaders. It would be the president and the chairman, and also the mayors and governors of the local communities, and they really have to communicate and tell seriously how they are really committed to work on achieving such SDG goals and others, and that will become more widespread and shared by the members of the community. And we have two leaders of the local governments and the two leaders of the companies. So going forward, how we will be able to accelerate decarbonization initiatives, and for that, what would be the sort of the challenges we need to address? So we would like to really gain inputs and insight from the leaders, and also together with you, we would like to really have some considerations. And in both of the companies are really aiming at zero emission, or the path or journey towards the zero emission, and that is being advocated. What is exactly the very sort of priority you are now advocating? And Ms. Koike, please, first, to be very concise, please, to the point, please.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this forum. When I was the Minister of the Environment, the global warming and climate change was the big theme for me. Each and every one of us needs to be committed and act. So I think in order to do that, we launched a Cool Biz initiative. And I always says we have to have the good balance of the mindset and technology and the system. So we have to have a good combination of these three. In that sense, Tokyo Metropolitan Government in 2010, before the national government, introduced a cap and trade system, emissions trading system. And this time also, for 2020 Tokyo Olympic and Paralympic Games, for 4 days we have ceremonies, including opening and closing ceremony. So we are going to use cap and trade system for offsetting, and this is going to the message we can communicate to the world. And also, Athletes Village will be using hydrogen. So ultimately, the renewable energy will be used to produce energy, and actually hydrogen is to be used to store energy. I think that's the best way. So in a village, we are going to use renewable energy produced in Fukushima to be transferred to Tokyo, although it is a little bit costly, but it is going to be a good message to the world. Another message, zero emi. This is a 4-character words. Maybe this has to win this year's popular phraseology. Usually in Japan, popular words are 4-letter words, 4-character words. Zero emi would be a good candidate. Then what are we going to do with zero emi? For example, electric vehicles and PHV. So mobility is to be supported. So, for example, on an island, electric vehicles can be used. There is a conversion to EVs. We can pay for that. We call it ZEV, ZEV. So the share of ZEV in the newly purchased cars have to be 50% by 2030. That is our numerical target. And also ZEH, that is zero emission housing. Likewise, we have a zero emi target as well. So we are taking various measures for that. ZEI, as we called it, zero emission island, because Tokyo has 11 manned islands. Ogasawara Islands has a Hahajima Island. On that island, renewable energy model island will be created. ZEI, ZEI. Therefore, everything starts with Z and E. So the last word can be vehicle, housing, island. So this is coupled with the combination of mindset, technology, and system, because Tokyo has the most populous city, and Tokyo has to be that zero emi or zero emission leader. And this is going to be a message to society and to the world. And we want to be a sustainable society building. We have a concrete measures in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Mayor Kadokawa, in the city of Kyoto, what is the priority towards the decarbonization?
Well, thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Do you, Kyoto, are you doing something eco-friendly? 11 years ago, Kyoto Protocol was launched, and in the 10th anniversary, the Chancellor Merkel visited Kyoto in the symposium. Kyoto is now becoming a verb. Do you, Kyoto? Are you doing something that's good for the environment? It has been used globally. I felt so proud at the same time. I felt a sense of mission and all sorts of measures. We should really focus on environment. The GHG ordinance and KES. Many things were done for the first time in Kyoto, which later spread to other parts of Japan. Another thing is the philosophy of Japan, the way of living that Japanese people cherished, ethics. It was eco-friendly. We need to have a renewed understanding. This is mottainai. Thanks to the nature, we have this. And being thrifty, last year, that was the 20th anniversary, Kyoto 20, from 18 countries, 1,000 people gathered on the 20th anniversary. From Kyoto to Paris Agreement, between Paris and Kyoto, the 60th anniversary since we had this friendship and amity. We would like to now have a global viewpoint. Kyoto Declaration. And now we have this Project Zero. This is what we are communicating to the international community. We want to achieve this. SDGs and a resilient city we were selected as 100 among with the other 100 cities in the world. We need to change the lifestyle about the business management and the city management. We need to focus on this. That's number one. Two, we have to foster the people, children, university students. In all areas, we need to foster people. Thirdly, innovation. As was mentioned, you have to foster innovation. You can't just let it happen. But silicon carbide in all sorts of semiconductors, when it's used to, that's comparable to 10 units of nuclear power plants, nuclear reactors. What was started in Kyoto, this is the steelless nanofiber. It's 5 times sturdier than the steel. And if Ricoh and Sony could use it with Kyoto University, and then also the research institute in Kyoto, we studied this. Apply on glass, and because of the optical refraction, the heat is shielded. We have that technology as well in Kyoto. I think someone like that would receive Nobel Prize sometime in the future. But we see these things happening: innovation and the city management, innovation in city management. If we could do this, yeah. If you could go back to the first page. The page that was to Kyoto. But as a result of these undertakings, what has happened in the 20 years or so, we could slash the rubbish by half per citizen. This is 402 grams. 557 is the average of the ordinance designated cities. So our rubbish is actually 70% of the nation average. Energy, the tourist inbound is increasing, but the population is decreasing. Energy consumption is likely to decrease 27.2%. Now, we are trying to prioritize people and the public transport. Kyoto, where people can walk, the private car usage decreased by 80%. Inbound, that's 15% or so. Japanese visitors are important. What people use the cars in the past 17 years, reduction by 20%. Railway and bus increased by 30%. We want to integrate various measures. That's what we want to do. And we have a big dream. We have great initiatives. From Do You Kyoto, Do You Japan. From Kyoto, we want this message, Do You Japan. With these specific measures, this is something we want to do.
Thank you very much. Last month, in San Francisco C40, and that is the sort of a conference of local governments, and I visited there, and all the leaders of local governments from around the world. And decarbonization is really to increase the competitiveness of local governments, exactly. And so the CO2 emission by the local communities accounts for 70%, and also the waste and the garbages and approximately 60% to 70% are really created by the cities. And if there is an efficiency improvement of the cities, we will be able to see efficient sort of decarbonization. Now, we would turn to leaders of the businesses in Sony in September. At the C40, and the Sony finally attended. Is a member of RE100, and 12 Japanese companies are signatory to that. And RE renewable energy 100% is to be aimed at. And so, what is the priority of your company? Good afternoon, Hirai from Sony, and today thank you very much for inviting me to this session. And I'd like to really share with you some Sony's efforts to the climate changes. And at Sony, the initiatives for the environment and the very basic platform is the Sony Groups for business activities, and also through the life cycle of products, we are to look into the environmental load, and we are to really make it zero for the carbon footprint, environmental footprint, and to by 2050. And so, what kind of initiatives should we really do? And then utilizing backcasting method, and every 5 years we are really coming up with the 5-year midterm target plans. And also, in order to achieve the longer-term target, back in 2010, we developed this plan, and as shown here, Road to Zero. And Road to Zero is the name we have given to this environmental plan. And in the 5 years from 2015 and in 2020, targets were defined, and the Green Management 2020 is a project which is underway. And as for the targets related to the climate change, and in line with the 2 degrees target of the Paris Agreement, and for the very first time as the Japanese company, we were recognized or approved as a science-based target company, and that was in 2010. And so we are engaged in the various business activities, and we do have a large production processes, and also the largest carbon emission is centering on the CMOS sensors, and semiconductor business is the largest emitter. And at the same time, this is another important point. And Sony, mainly we are producing the CMOS sensors in Japan. We make investment in Japan, and we are really generating the employment here in Japan. That is a specific feature of CMOS image sensors, and digital cameras of yours and smartphones, and then you might imagine CMOS image sensors. But as we are going to move into the self-driving era, automotive image sensors, the demand and market is expected to grow going forward. Therefore, digital imaging devices with the widespread use of the smartphones, and also the automotive image sensors is going to really increase. And so in that context, how we will be able to reduce the environmental impact and minimize that. And so that is a very important point in our business. And on top of that, we do have the production sites inclusive of the semiconductors, and we are really implementing the energy saving measures, and also to introduce more of the renewable energy, and to really minimize the environmental footprint. And so this is something we are positively really being pursuing. And based upon this kind of philosophy, Sony, we joined RA100, and just 2 months ago, on September 10th, we made an announcement. And the concrete really target, and by FY 2040, for all of the electricity power consumed by the production sites, it will become the 100% renewable energy, and inclusive of the electricity and also production sites, as well as the entertainment business. And then in movies making, we would establish the various studios and others, and that will give a large impact to the environment. By FY 2040, we are really going to achieve 100% renewable energy. And on top of that, 100% renewable energy already we have achieved that in Europe, but in Japan and North America and China, we are really going to positively roll out the same kind of initiatives. And Europe in 2008 already the 100% renewable energy was achieved. And next in North America, currently 25%, and the re-energy composition. And by 2030, before this target date, and then we are really going to achieve 100% in North America. So specific regional target is set up, and the major challenge is the procurement cost of renewable energy. Unfortunately, compared to Western countries, it is costly, and sometimes it is more than several folds or several tens of higher. And so we have to really lower the cost. And as we are really having many of the CMOS sensor production sites in Japan, this is one of the challenges we need to address. And as we have joined RA100, and we are making commitment to make this renewable energy 100%, and we are to really invite more of the discussion, and also to lead to the actions to be taken by many other parties as well. And I think this is very important. That's it from me. Thank you. Mr. Hirai, one question. Why now? Why now RE100, and why is it that you made this decision now? Road to Zero, and this is a very major concept we have been advocating since 2010. And internally, within our group, and when I was a president, in various scenes and occasions, we said that we are to really emphasize this, and the leaders' messaging was done. And new President, Mr. Yoshida, is taking over that, and also he is also positively pursuing this, not just internally within our group, but also outside of the group. And the commitment of Sony's BZB environment should be positively communicated. Also, in concrete terms, we have to really come up with the scheme whereby we will be able to really have these specific targets set. And so that is the reason why we've decided to be a member of RE100. And when we had the press release or press conference there, we have made a press release to the media people. And thank you for waiting, Mr. Yamashita, Rico. And as Kato-san earlier, the environmental-based management is the sort of a target. And then you had this Paris Agreement, and the company has finally made a firm resolve to really work on that. RE100, a year and a half ago, you declared that as the very first company in Japan, and then internally or externally, or the suppliers, what kind of impacts have you seen, or what kind of reactions or impact have you seen? And also, what are your priorities now?
So once again, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yamashita from RICO. In this kind of atmosphere, I feel a little bit out of place. I feel a little bit nervous. Kuniya-san asked me questions about RE100 April last year. Yes, we had a chance to join this. In a way, we really had to brace ourselves for this. And about 6 months ago, Sekisui House became the number 2. Every month, the new company became a member. Now we see 12 companies as members of the RE100. We sort of had to take the bold initiative to join the member of the RE100. I'm glad we could do a little bit of service to others. Last April, when I assumed the current position, president, we wanted to sort of renew the intrinsic DNA of our company, the awareness of the employees, and also the responsibility as a global company. That was the original basis. There are 4 aims or so, but at the very end, this was so important. We really have to communicate our resolve from the demand side. Otherwise, the supply side changes will not actually go. Because, as was mentioned, in the Europe offices, we have already achieved 100% renewables. But the plants in Japan, we have difficulties achieving this, including the government, the companies. It's high time for companies to take initiatives. May I? Go ahead. What are your priorities? Give me 2 or 3 minutes. 2 weeks ago, in New York, the 10th Climate Week New York was held. There, I gave a related speech. I was surprised. I was the very first Japanese CEO to speak. So what kind of place was this? I was wondering when I was on the way. But before I made my speech, New Zealand, Haiti, Marshall Islands, the premiers from these countries delivered speeches. What did they say? They have a quite sense of crisis. Most of them are island nations. Their people's, their properties, and works, everything is in the islands. So the climate change and with the raise of the sea level, people's properties will be lost, or the nation itself is in the danger. I could really sense that from the premier's speeches. I delivered a kind of a prepared speech. Come to think of it, Japan is also an island nation. In the coastal areas, many of the cities are in the coastal areas. People's lives and industries are located in the coastal areas. In this 10th meeting, I was the very first Japanese CEO. As a company, as a country, maybe Japan's presence was a bit low in that context. There are people, the leaders who are gathering, but all the government-wide and the business-wide, as the Governor Koike mentioned, we really needed to promote this concept at the very end of my speech. This is the last line. We do not inherit it.
We borrow it from our children. これネイティブアメリカンの言葉で残っている言葉なんですけど、この通りですね。この地球は先祖から。
So this Earth is not something that we have inherited from ancestors. We borrow it from our children. So we have to pass it or return it to our children in a better condition than we inherited. I agree. I feel this, and I think this could serve as a good foundation. Regarding our activities, if the time allows, I would like to come back to this, but this is my first round.
Thank you. Well, leading up to this session, and as well expressed by the representatives of the businesses, and Mr. Hirai and Mr. Yamashita said something in common. And aiming at RE 100, well, is quite challenging in Japan because for suppliers, if you want to change the suppliers, and the EON, the representative, well, she said that she would like to increase the number of the colleagues and partners. And then, well, that was really emphasized earlier. And also Mr. Hirai just now said the procurement cost in Japan, in the worst case, well, scenario, well, it is really higher by several fold, and well, it might really damage the competitiveness of the Japanese companies. And unless we change that, we will not be able to really accelerate the initiative to decarbonize the society. Now, becoming a member to RE 100 and the existing and the power sort of energy mix on the part of the power companies, the achieving RE 100 could be quite challenging, and some of the companies do really generate the power on their own. Unless they do generate power on their own, this RE 100 target cannot be achieved in Japan. And what are the largest obstacles in trying to really reach this RE 100? And local governments are really trying to aim at achieving RE 100 and businesses alike. But the cost is high. What are the sort of obstacles? Any leader from this session, please?
Hi.
To be honest with you, citizens, companies, including us, we really need to share the sense of crisis. We don't really see the reality. This is the only way for the humankind to survive. How best we could share this understanding. At the same time, we should share the objective, share the activities. I think that's really the essence. As a local government, the SDGs were mentioned. It's starting yesterday. The Kyoto International Film Festival started. So the film festival and SDGs are closely connected. The Nishi Honganji, the World Heritage, the opening ceremony was held. Nishi Honganji, and Shinran's teachings by the Buddhist monk in the Japanese historic figure, that's been connected in the SDGs. So these players on SDGs environment, they have to have a sense of ownership and tackle them as their own issues, and start small, start with everyone else. And lifestyle, you have to be thoroughly innovative. Kyoto is strong, and Japan is also strong in creating innovation. The environment administration and the cultural affairs agency will be moved. And also consumers, you have to become smart consumers. You should. Sometimes people talk about it. Consumers shouldn't be deserved, but that's not the way. SDGs, zero emissions, including all these things, you have to be consumers who are smart. And then also the work style reform. In the Kyoto's ryokan, the traditional Japanese inns, have at least one day off in weekends. Otherwise, they can't really ensure the high level of workers' working conditions. We want to create the new 3Ks, the good salary, and good holidays. And then 70 to 80% are non-regular workers. So the way they work, the consumer administration, work style reform, we should integrate all of these things. Innovation in institutions, innovation in science. In order to do this, sharing the clear objectives is important.
Earlier, I talked about the combination of mindset, technology, and system. That is the basic fundamental philosophy of martial arts. And so the combination of mindset, technology, and system, that's important. Then why is it that in Japan, RE 100% is achieved in the case of Ricoh and Sony, but why it cannot be done in Japan? I have been advocating the burying electric lines underground. However, Japan is an earthquake-prone country from the perspective of disaster management. If we bury electric power line underground, that would be negative. That is a negative impression people have. However, other regions already have buried power lines, and also other countries which are poorer than Japan are already burying electric power lines underground. But Japan is lagging behind. So that is because cost is involved. Cost is too high. So 1 kilometer of electric power above ground and underground is about 1 to 10 difference. So we make a cost calculation. So what is the environmental cost then? So for companies, on a quarterly basis, they have to calculate profit and losses, and also there is a shareholders meeting, and costs have to be strictly scrutinized. However, we have to see a holistic total cost for the society as a whole. So I think that is a basic idea involved in SDGs. So in the case of Tokyo, I want to take the lead in this area. One of the tools for us to do that is SDG. We often talk about ESG in parallel with SDG, environment, social, and government. So ESG, we want to move finances. In the case of Tokyo, Tokyo has a financial power. We have to make use of it. And we launched the Tokyo Financial Award, and we have a contest competition in top ESG companies, and the efforts being made by companies and philosophy enshrined by companies with regard to ESG. These companies are recognized. So at the same time, for the first time among Japanese municipalities, Tokyo issued green bonds amounting to 10 billion yen or so. Immediately, it was completely subscribed or sold. So in this way, financial services and environment should be combined together so that we can use other costs or other tools to support environmental efforts. If we look at costs only, we are damaging society. So that damage would be even more costly. Therefore, we want to provide very concrete measures. We want to propose them in view of population and size of the city. Tokyo is just like another country. It's very big. So if we can experiment a business model like this, I think it would expand as a business.
Personally, well, the former mayor, Mr. Bloomberg of New York, and also Mr. Karl Popper had written The Climate of Hope, and I supervised the translation. And in that book, well, Mayor Bloomberg said that, well, the power should be dedicated more from the national government to the local governments, and by so doing, it might accelerate the move towards the decarbonization. And you are really managing the metropolitan government as well as the mayor of Kyoto. You are managing the city of Kyoto, and in order to really accelerate this movement, what would it take to really accelerate that? And
there are many things, right? Mayor Kadokawa, recently we had a Furusato tax payment. It was launched in an August way, but then the central government saying you can't do this and that. So people would have a dumping effect. So the local economy revitalization, to what extent this tax system contributed?
In order for the company and also the local government to really decarbonize, and the local government took the lead.
I forgot to mention this in relation to cap and trade system. Tokyo launched this system boldly, and you can attach cost to CO2. This is very important. In the northern part of Osaka, there was an earthquake, and block fence fell, and a child died. And such a brick fell. I think this is a legacy of Showa period, and maybe this can be changed to wooden fences. And then there will be a demand for trees and woods in the world, and the cityscape will be changed. And also, the semi-mountainous area suffered because of flooding recently, and water storage capacity declined. And 50 and 60 years old tree rampant around the country. So it is high time to cut these trees. And because there is no price attached to trees, they can't cut. However, if we introduce a market principle, the mountain can move. So Kyoto Protocol, at that time, this is involved in the calculation of a carbon sink of trees, and also that would be contribute to global warming measures. So in this way, if we can create a chain reaction by making use of regions, and I think Internal Affairs Ministry should think more about this. Maybe it is not at all today. So maybe we have to have a nationwide effort, and I proposed this in the Governors Association of Japan, and 47 prefectures, 1 to 46, because Tokyo is the only prefecture which is now receiving a grant from the central government. However, other prefectures are joining me, so I want to create a movement.
Now let's listen to the companies, and first of all, this is a very grand theme, and in English, multi-stakeholders is often referred to, and exactly this is something that the multi-stakeholders have to move in the same direction, and they really have to make a resolve and determination and commitment to be made. At the same time, from the business's perspective, this is really important, decarbonization and to reduce the environmental footprint. And of course, a single company can really work on that, but it is not going to provide any advantage. But R&D and also the development services and products in a competitive environment against your competitors, you are really competing by cybersecurity as well as the environment. This will not give a business any advantage, but they really have to address that. And then, everybody needs to move in the same direction, and there's no disadvantage. And so, not a single company or business to really address that, but different businesses need to really work in collaboration, and also the governments need to really work collaboration. There's nothing negative of doing that. And by so doing, and then we'll do Japan, and then that was decided to become a mate, and then that would make Japan stronger, and also the employment could be created, and also the investment could be really well broadened or widened. And so the businesses, the attitude, and also the multi-stakeholders involvement will be really well welcomed, and then we should actively promote that. 12 companies, and then it could be really well 100 businesses and 200 businesses, inclusive of SMEs, and that's very desirable. But you would like to change the sort of the supply side, Yamashita-san. What can you do?
Can I really share with you what I have in my mind? Go ahead. Go ahead. Mr. Hirai, what Hirai-san said, I really support that. 70% of the recruits, they are actually the members. The customers are actually stronger. In terms of the decarbonization, they asked for the survey sheet. I have never really received that document from Japanese customers. I visit investors and about ESG investment, non-financial the assessment. For selecting the investees, that's non-finance, ESG investment, that's important. They looked at the past 10 years. What's the growth rate compared with those companies that have not invested in ESG? As a result, they are actually growing better. But you don't really feel that here in Japan. But if you go abroad, they are already riding this tide. They are riding this movement. So we can't really sit and wait. It might be costly, but if you look at the source of competitive edge, in the past, people talked about cost competition, but now I feel that we are no longer in that kind of a game. It has shifted. Among the companies, we can share that. That's significant. Now, about the supply chain, decarbonization in the supply chain for SMEs, they become a kind of a group of team. So suppliers that are not really doing well in the decarbonization, if you try to exclude it, that doesn't sit well with the Japanese practices. So as RICO, what do we do? By doing those activities, if the electricity tariff goes down, and then on the decarbonization, if we could make some contributions, just 15 or 20 companies, designated companies, we are teaching them, we are giving them training. So expanding the move is important. This is about regional revitalization. If you go to rural areas, there are so many companies, but we can't really depend on the local government. Looks like that seems we can't be so dependent on the local government in those areas. So I'm echoing what Governor Koike said. In terms of overall movement, the national government perhaps should improve the overall environment. Improvement. If they could improve the system so that such companies will be acknowledged, then Japan as a whole perhaps would be appreciated in the global community. But as I said, our presence is still low.
In the earlier session, commitment by the government, even there is a change of the administration, the commitment should remain unchanged, and that was a topic covered. And even if there is a willingness to really commit to RE100, there is no physical sort of the availability of such of the renewable energy. And Paul Dickinson's is to really enhance the transparency of the businesses, and various surveys have been conducted, and also they are really asking the businesses to make a report, and also vis-a-vis their suppliers, the climatrics. That kind of system was established. And from the suppliers, the information provided suppliers should be paid to the businesses. And so we are seeing the infrastructure being developed, and then the visualization is ongoing. So I think there is more incentives to go for the RE100. What exactly are the walls or the obstacles? Unless we overcome the obstacle, even though we share the inspiration aspiration, we cannot make any the way ahead.
We need good indicators, very easy to understand indicators. Setting aside hydropower generation, renewable energy, what's the usage of renewable energy? Germany, 28%. Japan, 6.8%, according to the information I had. Our company, globally, we're only 100. What was great about being number one was that what's the usage of renewable energy? We were able to visualize this among the 200 countries. We could see this. Globally, 14.5% as of April last year. Now, it's a little less than 16%. So renewable energy is being used, and we were able to visualize this by region, by country. We should have visualized this. So then Japan 6.7%. What's the target? I think people would be talking about this. It's an easy to understand indicator should be shared. I think that's important.
Well, under these circumstances and non-state actors, an initiative for decarbonization, and we have such a large turnout here, and together with the America's pledge, we do have the connection, and we do have this world bridge while connecting us to the world. And the action taken by the non-state actors, how that could be leveraged for decarbonization. A kind of collaboration platform is now developed, and how can we really take advantage of that? Well, Koike-san, you often really been attending conferences such as this C40 and others. Well, how can we really accelerate this momentum?
C40, the cities, municipalities, local governments of the world come together under C40. The mayor of Paris, Hidalgo, the assistant to I am assisting him as a vice chairman of the C40. 2020 Tokyo Olympics and 2024 Paris and 2028 Los Angeles. So in this way, Olympic Games will continue, and we have connection among these cities. So the Tokyo legacy has to be handed over to the next Olympic sites, and actually non-state actors will be able to liaise with each other. So we are promoting such connection. In the beginning of November, at the city office of Paris, the furoshiki, or maybe eco bag, another word, it is artistic, and we are going to exhibition of furoshiki in the city office of Paris. And on that occasion, we are going to discuss with the mayor again how we are going to cooperate in the future. So each city can find its own way to promote decarbonization. In the case of Tokyo, as I said, we focus on finance, and we promote ESG investment. We issue green bonds, and that is, we are Tokyo. That is why we can do that, and we must do that. Tokyo must take the lead here, and the various companies in Tokyo are making a lot of efforts. So these hardworking companies have to be recognized and honored, and that will lead to enhancement of enterprise value. So institutional investors, for example, want to have some yardstick to measure the companies like Orange County and others. They have a measurement. European institutions have a greater tendency in this regard. FTSE focuses on companies which promote women empowerment, and the share price may go up as a result. Therefore, we want to promote combination of technology and financial services. So the municipality like Tokyo can make a contribution in this area. And we would like to expand the collaboration among cities, and this is also going to contribute to the change of movement in the world.
Kadokawa-san, how are you going to use the collaboration?
I really feel that it's a different era. More than 10 years ago, I assumed the current position. Then the Environment Ministry opened was open for receiving requests to become an environment city. Of course, we raised our hand, and then we were rejected. We were not acknowledged.
I was not then environment minister.
Since the birth of Kyoto Protocol, for instance, the waste oil from tempura at 1.8 thousand, we collected the waste oil, and that's used to drive the rubbish, the cars, rubbish collecting. And then from the nursery school, the elementary school, middle school, senior high school, and the universities, they're doing various activities, Eco 100 options. If I talk about this with their confidence, I said I was the enemy of the market and the tram and the PV photovoltaic. And then they just pursued this, and they were accepted as an environment city. So the gathered force, we have to put together. Otherwise, all the local governments have to put together. There was a kind of a secondary request for proposals, and in the same year, we were acknowledged, and the next year we got A from ABCD. We got A. For the past 4 years, we were ranked A. So all the things. All the players put together regarding something we cannot do, try to address them by collaborating. I think that's most important with companies and all the others. When they can do certain things, make a contribution, that's great. But 99.5% companies in Kyoto are SMEs or micro companies, and they have the history of 100 years or 1,000 years. They have great technologies. With that, and with the universities and technology and needs in the society, how can we connect those dots? We should get serious. As for the support from the government, because the micro companies can't really get funds, making it difficult for them to take risky things. Because it's tradition, they just follow what the ancestors have done. That's not the case. Tradition is really the continuation of innovation. Create innovation, create the successful cases one by one. The Ricoh and Sony, you have been making such efforts. That's so great. Please do collaborate with our SMEs in Kyoto.
From the business's perspective, JCI and the paid membership group is also established. And in a different ways, we have the sort of a collaboration and connection of the different, non-state actors. And how are you going to really make use of it? And how are you going to really increase the impact?
You watched me. You looked at me. Well, since the establishment of JCI, we had a chance to participate. Now we are a significant team. We have grown. I am delighted to see that. We raised our hand to participate. If you look at those organizations, you call them non-state actors. As non-state actors with the state, in a way, you are bridging that with a certain leadership, and that's important. Should communicate to the nation and also give feedback. Because we don't have so many avenues to communicate what we think to the government. So in that sense, if you could just play that role, that'd be great. And Mayor Kadoka mentioned, I think it's really about environment technology. In the long range, solving the issues with technology, I think that's a very important consensus. So again, of course, company makes an investment, but together as a group, the funding from the government should be allocated appropriately. If that could be done, that'd be great.
Hirai-san, do you have anything to share with us? Well, there have been so many types of discussion, and I think it all boils down to the consciousness or awareness. And it could be true of the political leaders and leaders of the businesses, and conversely, those of the people with the voting rights, and also the users who are really purchasing our products. And all these are multi-stakeholders, and all of the people need to be aware that this is something we should definitely do. And in a sense, it's not that we are going to make change overnight, but in elementary schools and junior high schools, and in these educational occasions, where we have to really appeal the importance of this decarbonization. And so early on, we would like to really make this known to the children in their early age. And so that should be really incorporated into the education in Japan, and to really enhance the consciousness of the people. And it will be true of JCI, and also our company has really announced our sort of the commitment, and also that was widely covered by mass media, which was really a good thing. So to the extent possible, we really have to have the sort of the higher exposure, and to send out messages not just internally but externally, and also vis-a-vis the next generation. Once they join the society, and they would really feel that this is something they really have to work on, and that's a must. And so we would like to really encourage them to have that kind of mindset. And this is decarbonization. It's not anything new. The multi-stakeholders and cybersecurity, and also the gender diversity and LGBT, and no one single company can address that. And so we be addressing all these issues as a multi-stakeholder. This is nothing new, and so we should have the mindset and to make commitment and to really deliver the target we set, and that should be shared amongst all of the people. I think that's critical. Going forward in the next decade, and the speed of decarbonization should be accelerated, and that is required, and particularly the leaders. And in the earlier session, there was the sort of the term resolve mentioned, and 3 or 4 times. The people have said that there is a need for the resolve to be made. And in Japan, in the context of decarbonization, somehow, we are not really the front runner any longer. And whenever I go to the other countries, I feel that. And so the leaders of the local governments and leaders of the businesses, once again, are encouraged to take the leadership, to really gain the leadership position again. And what is lacking most, and what should be done. And I'd just like to ask each panelist to say a few words.
10月30日に、食品ロス削減の、全国大会がある30ですか、日本の食品ロスは年間640万トン、世界の食料危機の支援が320万トン。
3.2 million is the food support to the. Now, that's such a waste. By collaborating with the universities and the international community, we do this meeting. You have been making so much efforts in the market, in the Kyoto, the central market. There's a Uchida-san from the market. Oranges, bananas, and cherries. If the liberalization of imports, all the Japanese competitive products would actually be out. But that didn't happen. Japanese fruits are great. But what about the competing products against Japanese Japanese fruits? It's the water, because young people drink these things, and then they discard those bottles, and then they spend 300, 500 yen. That's why they can't buy the fruits. That's bad for environment. The water in the PET and the tap water, the difference is times 400. The environment footprint, that's times 700. The PET water per 1 liter, 3 liters of crude oil is used. That's what I heard. COP3, a certain person participated in the COP3, And then when they left, more than 50% of the participants didn't even bother to turn off the switches. Now it's difficult, isn't it? At your own level of living your life, you have to think. And what you think on the global level, there has to be consistency, and you have to tackle that.
Thank you, Koike-san.
Yes. I talked about the combination of mindset, technology, and system. The other day, I hosted an international conference in Tokyo, and the heads of cities of the world came together, and we chanted all together Shingi Tai, and just like Ohayo gozaimasu, the next comes Shingi Tai. It's not for general purpose, but for municipalities like us, this concept is very important. That can be shared by other cities as well. And just recently, IPCC special report was released. In 2030, 1.5 degrees increase is expected. This number is astonishing. I was shocked. And also, it's real. It was very realistic. The way it was released was really, really realistic. So in the past, business as usual. If we continue business as usual, damage to the earth will be worth several tens of trillion. So such a damage is becoming more and more realistic, particularly in the case of Japan. And also in other countries too, people thought this was real because of disasters this year. Tokyo will be hosting Olympic and Paralympic Games, and this will be a good opportunity for the city. So using that opportunity, and from Tokyo and from Japan, we would like to communicate a message in the concept of Shingi Tai, or mindset, technology, and system, and also mindset change of the Tokyoites, and also the system to promote the decarbonization or behavioral change. And I would like to communicate that strongly to Tokyo people and people in the country, so that people can have a sense of ownership, so that businesses think that they can do something, and that kind of commitment has to be enticed. Thank you.
Mr. Hirai, thank you very much for today. And I will be brief. Well, those are people who are managing businesses who know this. And there are various ways to look at the management, and how to really maximize the human beings and physical objects and money. And so that would be the very core of the corporate management, and that's what I learned from my predecessors. But all these were things, and how to really you make use of your internal resources. And it is a kind of inward looking, and it's a kind of selfish discussion. But lately, thinking about various things and going forward, the corporate management to deliver the results. Of course, there should be people and money and objects and goods, but in order to really promote your businesses, and of course, you can really make use of these effectively, but partners, external partners, and external environment, you have to think about what kind of impact that would give it to others. And I think the hurdle or the bar is raised higher, but combining all this internally, you would be able to really deliver the better products or services to customers, and at the same time to really lower the environment footprint and to realize decarbonization. And earlier in my talk, I have referred to the important points and being the mindset, and to be aware of these issues. And we have to really define and then achieve what. And so, for example, setting the milestone date of 2050, and then you have to really establish the target. And then, the leaders need to keep saying that. And then it's not constantly and on regular basis internally, the leaders should keep saying that. And then that would change the mindset of the people. And then, it takes time, and you really have to make a steady effort. It cannot be really achieved overnight. But at the end of the day, we will see a great result to be delivered by these four undertakings.
Thank you.
皆さんに重なるようですけど、やっぱり
I might be echoing other people saying, well, it's all about actions.
より良い状態で子供たちの
To
世代に
pass this earth in a better conditions to our children. Globally think about it and then take actions locally. I think that's the most important thing. That's how I personally feel.
So this is the very final session, and I have run over 4 minutes and 21 seconds itself. Well, thank you very much, and this concludes the very final session. Ms. Kuniya, thank you very much. And from now on, well, top leaders really going to really announce the Japan Climate Action Summit message, and we are asking the top leaders to sign this message. And those of you are in the press and mass media, well, please come forward because we are really going to have this photo session.
皆様にご署名いただくのはですね、気候変動アクション日本サミット宣言。
And we are asking the top leaders to sign the declaration of the Japan Climate Action Summit and vis-a-vis the COP24 to be held in Poland. We are really going to send out a very strong message from here. And in the declaration, well, though in a very short period of time, well, the inclusive of the 4 groups and 157 organization groups have agreed to this declaration. Top leaders, are you ready? So we ask the top leaders to sign this declaration. Thank you very much indeed.
それでは引き続きましてフォトセッションに移らせていただきます。
And we are going to really have the photo session. And those of the leaders on the stage, please come to the center of the stage. And also, those of the panelists, well, please get ready to come up onto the stage. And this is the photo session only limited to the press people. And this is the photo session only limited to the press people. And I'd like to ask for your understanding.
カメラの台数多いですので、センターから撮り、右から撮り、左から撮り、もう一回センター戻ってきますので、その時にシャッターチャンスを捕まえてください。公式カメラ中央入りますので、少し開けていただければと思います。男女の皆さん、センターの真ん中のカメラを見てください。こちらがお願いします。今度左手の方お願いします。じゃあもう一度センターのお願いします。写真大丈夫でしょうか。 海の方お願いします。今海の方の時間になっています。まだ準備されてます。まだもう少し男女の方お願いします。よろしいでしょうか。小型の登壇者の方全員後ろに並びますので、もう一度すぐカメラの人も、カメラを構えてやらせていただきます。首だけ右側に向けてください。お願いします。こちらです。左手をお願いします。父の方大丈夫でしょうか。遠くでしたらこっちのセンター、もう一度センターお願いします。ではムービーの方、まだこの後ムービーも撮りますので、まだ壇上お願いします。まだありますので、ムービーの撮影はこれからですので、お願いします。申し訳ありません。後ろきれいに並んでいただければと思います。よろしくお願いします。
And we'll be happy to communicate on the message channel when